Welcome to the Big Ditkas Podcast.
Hey, there we go. That ought to be a little bit better for us. Now today I got a better microphone. That's for darn sure. Don't mind me here. I got my control panel over here. So, today on the Big Ditkas Fantasy Football Podcast, I want to talk about something very important to a number of you in the league, and that is setting your auto draft if you are away. So I have pulled up the Yahoo page, and I am streaming this, so I'll send out the link. But you should be able to follow along if you're listening on the podcast, so don't worry about it. So let's talk about a couple things here. Firstly, just where to go, then showing you how to set the right order for it, because it doesn't actually pull up in the right order. Then I want to talk about what to do with your players in terms of the preferred, the do not draft, and explain a little bit about how the Yahoo Fantasy will auto draft your league, which leads into the next point, which is some of the strategy around auto drafting with Yahoo Fantasy Football. So let's get right into it. Over here, and again, you just want to head over to your Yahoo Fantasy. You're going to go up the top here to draft. And up there, you will find pre-draft rankings. So, in your pre-draft rankings, you'll see the button up here to edit my pre-draft player rankings. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, now the first thing you're going to notice is the default player rankings are all QBs up top. You don't really want that. No, we don't want that. So at the top left, you're going to see sort by, and we're going to change that to average draft position. And now you will have your average draft position there. From there, we can move players either left or right. You go to the left, they go to your do not draft. So let's say I really don't want to draft Alvin Kamara. I'll move him over to the left. And now, no matter what, Yahoo Fantasy will not draft Alvin Kamara. Move it to the right, and that's going to be my preferred list. So I'm going to move, let's say, Christian McCaffrey. And the way this will work then is when it gets to my pick, it'll go to my preferred players list first, so it'll look and see if Christian McCaffrey is picked. If not, it'll go to the default player ranking. So let's say I was first overall here, I'd be picking Christian McCaffrey. Imagine I was second overall, based on the average draft position, and that's a draft rank. Sorry, I'll talk about that in a second. But so sorry, I've Christian McCaffrey in my preferred players, and everybody else is the default player rankings. So essentially, what it would look. Yahoo would look at my preferred players, see if Christian McCaffrey has been drafted by another team. If he has, then it will go back to the default player rankings. Now, one thing that you might notice, if you move players in and out of that list, it really messes them up. That's why I was messed up there for a second, because it had put Alvin Kamara up at the top, and now it's put Christian McCaffrey up at the top. And even just changing the sort here, what you have to do is change it out to a different sorting rank or put it back to average draft position. The other thing you'll notice is reset to draft rank default ranking, so I can go ahead and do that. If ever you make a mistake, go ahead and do that, and that way it's back to default. So again, I'm going to add some players to my preferred list, then I'll add some players to my do not draft list, just adding here arbitrarily, but let's talk how the Yahoo will draft. Again, it'll start with my preferred, it'll go to the default, it'll never go to do not draft. But the other thing to keep in mind is that Yahoo Fantasy will draft your team and then your bench. So what that means is it'll draft, and in our league we have a QB, 2 RBs, 2 wide receivers, tight end, flex, defense, kicker. So what that means is it'll go through your list. Let me set up my list here with a whole bunch of running backs at the start. Here are all positions, running back. And I'll show you this, and then after that, I want to talk a little bit of strategy. So I'm going to put all running backs here. I'm going to say, hey, awesome. I'm going to draft every single running back I can possibly pick up, and then, I don't know, I'll fill out my team through trades. Crazy. What Yahoo Fantasy will do is it'll come, my first pick, it'll pick a running back. Let's say it picks Alvin Kamara. Great. Now I got Alvin Kamara on my team. That's 1 RB slot filled. Then it'll go around another loop. Let's say the next round, Dalvin Cook on my preferred list is available. So it's going to pick Dalvin Cook for me. Then it's going to go through third round, and it's going to go through to Aaron Jones. Now, Yahoo Fantasy is going to look at the RB and say, hey, you have a flex spot open, so I'm going to fill that flex spot with a running back. The next round that comes up, it will then draft a wide receiver or whoever's next on the default player ranking. So it could be a QB. It depends on where it is. I mean, it's not going to be wide receiver probably. But I just want to highlight that to you guys. So again, it'll fill your roster. So if I were to put up running backs, it'd go running back, flex, and then it'd go, wide receiver. It would go pretty much by the order of the default player rankings until it's full. So what that means is before it goes to your bench, it's going to start drafting your kicker. It's going to draft your defense for you, QB for you. It's going to do all of that. And maybe some of you would prefer to say, hey, I'm not going to draft a kicker. I'm not going to draft a defense. I'm going to save that till later. So that's where we get into the strategy around Yahoo Fantasy Auto-draft. And there's 3 things I want to share with you. Number 1, so the first thing you might do is actually say, hey, again, I'm going to wait. I'm going to take a kicker later on. So I'm going to put every single kicker here into my do not draft. Go ahead and do that here. There we go. Getting to the end. So there you go. I've now put every single kicker. Then I'm going to say I'm going to go ahead and put every single defense into my do not draft. What that will ensure is that, again, we're not going to have any defenses, any kickers being auto-drafted before it goes to my bench, because that's the key here. And there's running backs, there's wide receivers who I'd rather pick than kickers and defense. So I can pick one of those up before we. The next thing I want to do is move over to the tight ends. Again, it's going to fill out my roster spots. So what everybody recommends online is to leave only the tight ends you would be really happy with. Now, some people talk about removing some of the first tight ends or removing some of the later ones, or removing, just leaving kind of a core. It depends on your strategy if you're happy. I mean, I'd be happy with Kelsey, but it all depends on what round it is. Right now, he's ranked 60th. So again, you take out any tight end you don't like because you don't want Yahoo to just pick one for you if you don't like it. Now, again, you might leave a list of, let's say, about 12, 20 that you'd say I'd be happy with any one of these. Yahoo Fantasy is only going to pick really one of them. And you do the same thing with quarterbacks. So some people online were talking about removing quarterbacks or putting the top QBs on the do not draft list because, of course, a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes is probably going to go early, and some of you have a late QB strategy. So you're saying, hey, you know what? Because of the depth at quarterback, I don't want any of these top guys. And then you might go through and say, I also don't want any of these bottom guys. Like, I don't need, I think I don't need Matt Sims from Atlanta. Let's see. Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. So again, with Yahoo Fantasy, I don't need to put those into my preferred players here because what Yahoo Fantasy is going to do is going to fill my roster. So in this case, I've put all the defense, all the kickers. So what Yahoo Fantasy is going to do is it's going to run through running backs, is going to run through the wide receiver. And I may want to, of course, add some of them, right, to my my do not draft or move them into my preferred players. Again, a little bit how it works. Again, if I move, let's say, Zeke over to my preferred players, if he's undrafted when it comes to my round, then it'll go ahead and pick him up. If not, it'll go to the default. So in this case, we're looking at Johnson or. So that's a little bit about the strategy around setting up your pre-draft rankings. That's a little bit about how to set up your pre-draft rankings. Once you do, you hit save up top. The only other thing I want to mention is about this is I know some people who what they did when they want to go running back heavy is they actually loaded their preferred players all running backs. So they put all the running backs up top. And then they went ahead and went to wide receivers and put all the wide receivers. Now, it seems after last year that wide receiver, running back, there's a little bit more value in both. Of course, we're not in a PPR league, so wide receiver maybe takes a little bit less value, but this is all dependent on how you want to set it up. So, I think if it was me, I'd probably mix up running back and wide receiver, but it's all up to you. The last thing I want to mention is that there is a limit to how many players it'll take. I think it'll take something like 5 running backs and 5 wide receivers. So even if you loaded every single running back into your players to your bench spots, it's not going to just pick running back. At one point, it'll say you've got too many running backs, you can't take this many. And it'll move on to take other players. It'll move on to your wide receiver, which is why this running back first actually kind of works out. Because essentially what will happen then is I would go, the snake drive will go, I'd pick running back for my flex. then I would get wide receiver, quarterback somewhere in there, tight end, and then it would move over to my bench where I would take 2 more running backs, and then the rest would be wide receiver. So, I mean, some of you might be happy. Finally, I'm going to hit reset to default rankings because I've certainly messed mine up here. And that's it. You just hit save changes, and that is how you set your pre-draft rankings so that it'll auto-draft for you, and you're all set up and ready to go for our draft. Now, our draft is on September 4th. I think I misspoke. And I have set it up in the league, so you can go ahead and check that out. At the same time, the draft order has also been set. I don't even know where I see that, but the draft order has been set. Let's see if it's there. So September 4th, 7:30 p.m. Will, I hope that works for you. Sandra asked if we could just push it back just a half an hour, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So she asked if we could just do that. So if you go into the draft, I think you should be able to see the draft. All right. Well, let me read to you the draft order then. Now, the first overall is Will. So picking first is going to be Will with it's open now. So we got Will loading up first with Dirty Girl. Then we have Steaming Willie Beeman, who I believe has changed owners. John is taking over that team, one of another coworker, Chris's. Then we got Jimmy with Hammer, Chris with Ball Fumblers Anonymous, Steve, SoCal Rattlers, right in the middle at 5th. Then you have TB in the 6th, that's Sylvain at 6th, Clemson Hamburgers, Mike at 7th, and thank you for explaining to me that reference. It is absolutely fantastic. I got the Willie Beeman one as well, by the way. I feel really bad about that. Then you got me, Feeling the Pain, in 8. Sandra, who has changed her name from 49 cents, Pussy Galore. And I don't know if that's a Rent reference. And Mahomes drafting last in the round. So there you go. A little bit about how to set your pre-draft order so that your auto draft works the way you want. A little bit about the auto drafting strategy that you can employ, and finally, just a reminder about our draft date and time. So if you can't be there, I've showed you everything you need to know to auto draft, and I'm looking forward, of course, very, very much to 2019 Big Ditkus Fantasy Football League. It's going to be a good time, guys.